"Give me the wires, I'll fix it myself," Karen shouted, snatching the tools from the electrician's hands. The poor man stood there, dumbfounded, as Karen shoved him aside and clambered up the stepladder, her designer heels clicking against the rungs. She'd had enough of waiting around while someone else fixed her problems. Just minutes earlier, the power had gone out in Karen's lavish townhouse, plunging the rooms into darkness. She'd been in the middle of an important business call, and the sudden blackout had thrown everything into chaos. Her assistant, Emma, had immediately called the emergency electrician service, but Karen had grown impatient waiting for him to arrive. "Ma'am, I really must insist that you let me handle this," the electrician pleaded, holding up his hands in a futile attempt to reason with her. It could be dangerous for someone untrained to. "Dangerous? Please," Karen scoffed, waving a dismissive hand as she peered into the open circuit breaker box. "I grew up helping my father with all kinds of household repairs. I think I can manage a few wires." The electrician grimaced, recognizing the stubborn gleam in Karen's eyes. He knew there was no reasoning with someone like her, someone who firmly believed their own abilities were superior to those of the trained professionals. With a resigned sigh, he stepped back, silently praying that Karen wouldn't electrocute herself. Karen's fingers deftly traced the wires, searching for the source of the problem. "Aha, there it is," she exclaimed triumphantly, zeroing in on a tripped circuit breaker. "This is an easy fix. Just a little flip of the switch, and—" The instant her finger made contact with the breaker, a shower of sparks erupted from the box, causing Karen to yelp and stumble backward. The lights flickered wildly, and a loud, ominous crackle filled the air before the entire townhouse was plunged into complete darkness. "No, no, no," Karen cried, clutching the now useless tools to her chest. "What did you do?" The electrician rushed forward, his face illuminated by the faint glow of his phone's flashlight. "I'm so sorry, ma'am, but I did try to warn you," he said, his voice laced with concern. "Tampering with the electrical system can be extremely dangerous, especially for someone without proper training." Karen's eyes widened in the dim light, her usually impeccable composure slipping as she realized the gravity of her mistake. "Well then, fix it," she demanded, thrusting the tools back at the electrician. "You're the professional, aren't you?" The man shook his head regretfully. "I'm afraid the damage may be more extensive than a simple circuit breaker reset. We'll need to do a full inspection to determine the extent of the problem." He paused, then added, "And I'll have to bill you for the additional work." Karen's face twisted into a scowl, but before she could unleash another tirade, a low, ominous rumble echoed through the darkened house. The air grew thick with the acrid stench of burnt wiring, and Karen's assistant, Emma, let out a terrified shriek from somewhere in the shadows. "What was that?" Karen whispered, her voice suddenly small and uncertain. The electrician's brow furrowed, and he slowly raised his phone, casting its meager light across the room. What he saw made his blood run cold. The electrician's blood ran cold as he raised his phone's flashlight, casting a dim glow across the room. What he saw made his heart skip a beat. Thick, black smoke was billowing out of the circuit breaker box, filling the air with the acrid stench of burning wires. Tiny flames flickered within the box, casting an eerie orange glow that danced across the walls. "Oh my God," Karen whispered, her face blanching as she realized the severity of the situation. "Is the house on fire?" The electrician quickly ushered Karen and her assistant, Emma, back towards the front door. "We need to evacuate immediately," he said, his voice taut with urgency. "The electrical system is compromised, and there's a serious risk of the fire spreading." As they hurried outside, Karen's mind raced. How could this have happened? She was only trying to help, to fix the problem herself and avoid the extra expense. Now, it seemed, her actions had put them all in grave danger. Once safely outside, the electrician pulled out his phone and rapidly dialed the fire department. "There's a fire at 1428 Oakwood Avenue. he reported, his eyes darting back to the house with alarm. "We need immediate assistance." Karen watched in horror as the flames grew, licking at the walls and casting an ominous glow through the windows. She clutched Emma's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the girl's skin. "This is all my fault," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I shouldn't have." But her words were drowned out by the wail of sirens as the fire trucks approached, their flashing lights illuminating the gathering crowd of concerned neighbors. Within minutes, the firefighters were on the scene, quickly springing into action to contain the blaze. Karen could only stand by, helpless, as she watched her home go up in flames. The tidy facade, the carefully curated decor, the priceless artwork, all of it was being consumed by the hungry fire, reduced to ashes before her eyes. As the firefighters battled the blaze, Karen felt a profound sense of shame and regret wash over her. How could she have been so reckless, so arrogant in the face of professional expertise? Her desire to save a few dollars had put not only her own life at risk, but those of her loyal assistant and the hard-working electrician as well. The sound of shattering glass jolted Karen from her thoughts, and she watched in dismay as the flames seemed to gain new vigor, licking hungrily at the exposed timbers. The firemen were shouting commands, their faces grim with the realization that this was no ordinary electrical fire. Karen's stomach churned as she realized the full extent of the disaster unfolding before her. This was no mere inconvenience. This was a catastrophe of her own making, one that could have devastating consequences. As the firefighters continued their desperate battle against the flames, Karen knew that she would never be able to undo the damage she had wrought. The consequences of her actions were spiraling out of control, and she had no one to blame but herself. As the firefighters battled the growing blaze, Karen watched in horror, her heart pounding in her chest. The flames had now engulfed the entire second floor, and thick, acrid smoke billowed from the windows, obscuring her view. She could hear the shouts of the firefighters, their voices strained with exertion as they fought to bring the fire under control. The wail of the sirens echoed through the darkened street, drawing more and more onlookers to the scene. Karen's assistant, Emma, stood beside her, her face pale and her hands trembling. "What are we going to do?" she whispered, her voice laced with panic. Karen opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. She had no answers, no solutions to offer. This disaster was entirely of her own making, the result of her stubborn refusal to listen to the electrician's warnings. "I should have let him do his job," she murmured, more to herself than to Emma. "I was so sure I could handle it, and no." Her words were cut off by a loud crash as the second-floor windows shattered, sending a shower of burning debris raining down onto the lawn. The firefighters redoubled their efforts, training their hoses on the rapidly spreading flames. Karen watched, paralyzed with fear, as the fire continued to devour her home. She thought of all the precious memories contained within those walls, the family heirlooms, the artwork she had collected over the years, the cozy nooks where she had spent countless hours working and entertaining. And then there was the matter of her business. Her lavish townhouse also housed the headquarters of her luxury fashion brand, Carissima. All her hard work, her dreams of empire, were now going up in smoke before her eyes. "This can't be happening," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the roar of the flames. "Everything I've built, everything I've worked for, it's all gone." Emma placed a tentative hand on Karen's arm, her eyes brimming with sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Karen," she said softly. "Is there anything we can do?" Karen shook her head, her throat tightening with emotion. "No, there's nothing," she replied, her voice hollow. "I've made a terrible, terrible mistake, and now I have to live with the consequences." As the firefighters continued their relentless battle, Karen felt a sinking sense of dread in the pit of her stomach. She knew that the damage would be catastrophic, both to her home and her business. And the worst part was, she had no one to blame but herself. The sound of shattering glass and the crackle of the flames filled the air. a constant reminder of the devastation unfolding before her. Karen stood there, helpless and consumed by regret, watching as the life she had carefully constructed came crashing down around her. As the firefighters continued their relentless battle against the raging blaze, Karen felt a deep sense of dread wash over her. The once majestic townhouse that had been her pride and joy was now reduced to a smoldering ruin, the flames consuming every last remnant of the life she had built. She stood there, paralyzed by a mixture of fear, shame, and utter despair, watching as her dreams and aspirations went up in smoke. The crackling of the flames and the shouts of the firefighters created a cacophony that seemed to echo the turmoil within her own mind. Karen's gaze drifted to the crowd of onlookers that had gathered, their faces etched with a mix of concern and morbid fascination. She couldn't bear the thought of their pitying stares or the inevitable whispers that would spread through the community. "This is all my fault," she murmured, the words barely audible over the chaos. "If only I had listened to the electrician, none of this would be happening." Emma, Karen's loyal assistant, placed a gentle hand on her arm, her own eyes brimming with tears. "I'm so sorry, Karen," she said, her voice trembling. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Karen shook her head, her mind reeling with the magnitude of the disaster. "No, there's nothing," she replied, her voice hollow and devoid of emotion. "Everything I've worked for, everything I've built, it's all gone. And I have no one to blame but myself." As the firefighters continued their desperate battle, Karen couldn't help but replay the sequence of events in her mind. If only she had been more patient, more willing to listen to the expert advice of the electrician. Instead, her stubborn pride and sense of entitlement had led her down a path of reckless destruction. The sound of shattering glass and the crackle of the flames seemed to mock her, a constant reminder of the consequences of her actions. Karen felt a sinking sensation in the pit of her stomach, realizing that the damage to her business and her reputation would be irreparable. "I've lost everything," she whispered, the weight of her words heavy on her tongue. "My home, my business, my entire life. All because I couldn't swallow my pride and let a professional do his job." Emma squeezed Karen's arm, her eyes filled with empathy. "What will you do now?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. Karen's gaze flickered back to the smoldering ruins of her once magnificent townhouse, and she felt a surge of determination amidst the overwhelming sense of despair. "I'm going to have to rebuild," she said, her voice steadier than she had expected. "And this time, I'm going to do things the right way." As the firefighters continued their relentless battle against the blaze, Karen stood by, her eyes fixed on the smoldering ruins of her once magnificent townhouse. The realization of the devastation she had caused weighed heavily on her mind, a constant reminder of the consequences of her reckless actions. Turning to her assistant, Emma, Karen's expression hardened with determination. "I'm going to have to rebuild," she declared, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "And this time, I'm going to do things the right way." Emma's eyes widened with a mixture of surprise and concern. "Are you sure, Karen?" she asked cautiously. "After everything that's happened, I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to just walk away from all of this." Karen shook her head, her jaw set with resolve. "No, I can't just give up," she insisted. "This is my life's work, my legacy. I've poured my heart and soul into building Carissima, and I'll be damned if I let it all go up in smoke because of one foolish mistake." Stepping forward, Karen approached the electrician, who was standing off to the side, his brow furrowed with a mix of concern and professional detachment. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice tinged with humility. "You warned me about the dangers of tampering with the electrical system, and I should have listened. This disaster is entirely my own doing, and I take full responsibility for it." The electrician regarded her with a measured gaze, his expression softening slightly. "I appreciate your honesty, ma'am," he replied, "and I'm just glad no one was seriously injured. The important thing now is to work with the fire department to ensure the safety of the property and get your business back on its feet. Karen nodded, her eyes reflecting a newfound sense of determination. That's exactly what I intend to do, she said. I want to make sure this never happens again, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild my business the right way. Turning to Emma, Karen's expression hardened with resolve. I need you to start contacting our insurance provider and gathering all the necessary documentation, she instructed. We're going to have to file a claim and begin the process of rebuilding. Emma hesitated for a moment, then nodded, her own expression reflecting a newfound sense of purpose. Absolutely, Karen, she replied. I'll get started right away. As the firefighters continued their efforts to extinguish the blaze, Karen watched with a mix of sorrow and determination. She knew that the road ahead would be long and arduous, but she was more determined than ever to rise from the ashes of this disaster and reclaim her rightful place in the industry. This time, she vowed, she would listen to the experts and do things the right way. No more stubborn pride, no more reckless decision-making. She would rebuild Carissima, and she would do it with a renewed sense of humility and respect for the professionals who could help her succeed. In the days that followed the devastating fire, Karen found herself navigating a complex web of insurance claims, contractor negotiations, and city permits. The once majestic townhouse that had housed her thriving fashion business now stood as a charred and weathered husk, a stark reminder of the consequences of her actions. As she sifted through the rubble, sifting for any salvageable items, Karen felt a deep sense of loss. Her carefully curated collection of designer furniture, priceless artwork, and irreplaceable family heirlooms had all been reduced to ashes. It was a physical manifestation of the personal and professional setbacks she now faced. However, Karen's initial despair soon gave way to a renewed sense of determination. She had made a grave mistake, but she refused to let it define her. With the support of her loyal assistant, Emma, and the guidance of the insurance adjusters and construction experts, she set out to rebuild her empire from the ground up. We're going to do this the right way, Karen declared, her voice laced with a newfound humility. No more cutting corners or trying to do it all myself. This time, I'm going to listen to the professionals and follow every procedure to the letter. Emma nodded, her admiration for her boss's resilience growing with each passing day. I'm here for you, Karen, she'd assured, her hand resting reassuringly on the other woman's shoulder. We'll get through this together, one step at a time. As the demolition crew carefully dismantled the damaged structure, Karen found herself observing their work with rapt attention. She asked questions, took notes, and listened intently to the experts' recommendations, determined to learn from her past mistakes. The process was arduous and, at times, emotionally draining, but Karen remained steadfast in her commitment to rebuilding her business the right way. She worked closely with the electrical contractors, carefully overseeing every aspect of the rewiring and ensuring that the new system was up to code. I won't take any shortcuts this time, she told the electrician, who had returned to oversee the repairs. My pride nearly cost me everything, and I can't afford to make that kind of mistake again. The electrician nodded, a hint of respect in his gaze. I'm glad to hear it, ma'am, he replied. With the proper precautions in place, we should be able to get your business up and running again in no time. As the weeks turned into months, Karen watched with growing pride as the new Carissima headquarters began to take shape. Gone were the ostentatious flourishes and the disregard for proper protocol. In their place stood a sleek, modern building, meticulously designed and constructed with a newfound respect for safety and efficiency. Karen knew that the road ahead would be long and arduous, but she was determined to emerge from this crisis stronger than ever before. She had learned a valuable lesson about the consequences of entitlement and the importance of humility, and she was ready to put those lessons to work as she rebuilt her empire. As the months passed, Karen poured her heart and soul into rebuilding the Carissima headquarters, determined to emerge from the ashes of her past mistakes stronger and wiser than ever before. Gone were the days of reckless decisions and disregard for professional expertise. Karen now worked hand in hand with the construction team, architects, and electricians, meticulously overseeing every aspect of the rebuild to ensure it was done right the first time. "I can't afford another disaster like the one I caused," she told the electrician, who had returned to oversee the complex rewiring of the new building. "This time, I'm going to listen to the experts and follow every procedure to the letter." The electrician, who had initially been wary of Karen's entitled attitude, now regarded her with a newfound respect. He could see the genuine humility and determination in her eyes, a stark contrast to the stubborn arrogance that had nearly cost them all dearly. "I'm glad to see you've learned from your past mistakes, ma'am," he said, offering her a rare smile. "With the proper safeguards in place, I'm confident we can get this new facility up and running without any further incidents." Karen nodded, her gaze sweeping over the bustling construction site. "That's exactly what I'm counting on," she replied. "Carissima is my life's work, and I refuse to let one foolish decision destroy everything I've built." As the rebuild progressed, Karen found herself increasingly involved in every aspect of the process, from reviewing architectural plans to personally interviewing potential contractors. She was determined to leave no stone unturned, no detail overlooked. The once lavish townhouse that had housed her business was now a distant memory, replaced by a sleek, modern building that reflected Karen's newfound commitment to safety, efficiency, and professionalism. "This is a fresh start," she told Emma, her assistant, as they stood together, surveying the progress. "A chance to rebuild Carissima the right way, without any of the reckless decisions or blind spots that nearly cost us everything." Emma nodded, a proud smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I'm with you every step of the way, Karen," she replied. "And I know the rest of the team is too. We're all committed to making this work, no matter what it takes." As the grand opening of the new Carissima headquarters approached, Karen found herself filled with a sense of cautious optimism. She knew that the road ahead would not be an easy one, but she was determined to prove that she had learned from her past mistakes. This time, she vowed, she would listen to the experts, follow the proper protocols, and never again let her own pride and ego compromise the safety and well-being of her business and her employees. The grand opening of the new Carissima headquarters was a triumph, both for Karen and her dedicated team. Gone were the days of reckless decisions and disregard for professional expertise. In their place stood a gleaming, state-of-the-art facility built with safety, efficiency, and sustainability at the forefront. As Karen stood at the podium, addressing the gathered crowd of customers, partners, and employees, she couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought her to this moment. "The road to get here has not been an easy one," she began, her voice steady and resolute. "In fact, it's been marked by some of the most difficult challenges I've ever faced in my career." The audience grew silent, hanging on her every word as she recounted the fateful day when her own arrogance and pride had nearly cost her everything. "I made a terrible mistake," she continued, her gaze sweeping across the room. "I refused to listen to the experts, and as a result, I nearly lost everything: my business, my home, and the trust of the people who believed in me." A murmur of understanding rippled through the crowd, and Karen knew that her vulnerability was resonating with them. "But I vowed to learn from that experience," she went on, her expression hardening with determination. "I made a commitment to rebuild Carissima the right way, with a renewed respect for the professionals who could help me succeed." Karen then gestured towards the electrician, who stood off to the side, a proud smile on his face. "I owe a debt of gratitude to the people like him, who not only had the expertise to guide me through the rebuilding process, but also the patience and understanding to work with someone as stubborn and headstrong as I once was." The audience erupted in applause, and Karen felt a surge of pride and humility wash over her. She had come full circle, from the entitled, reckless woman who had nearly destroyed everything, to a leader who had learned the invaluable lessons of humility, respect, and the power of collaboration. As the event drew to a close, Karen made her way through the crowd, greeting well-wishers and shaking hands. She couldn't help but notice the newfound respect and admiration in the eyes of those who had once doubted her. In that moment, Karen knew that she had not only rebuilt her business, but she had also rebuilt herself. She was no longer the arrogant, entitled woman who had nearly cost herself everything. She was a leader with a renewed sense of purpose, one who understood the importance of listening to the experts and putting the needs of her team and her customers first. As she watched the electrician pack up his tools and prepare to leave, Karen made her way over to him, a genuine smile on her face. "Thank you," she said, her voice sincere, "for everything you've done and for never giving up on me, even when I was at my worst." The electrician nodded, returning her smile. "It's been my pleasure, ma'am," he replied. "And I'm glad to see you've learned the value of humility and respect. It's a lesson that will serve you well, both in business and in life." With that, the electrician turned and made his way out of the building, leaving Karen to ponder the profound changes that had taken place within her over the past year. She knew that the journey ahead would not be an easy one, but with her newfound commitment to doing things the right way, she was confident that she could not only rebuild Carissima, but also become a better, more empathetic leader in the process.